Okay, let's go ahead and finish this out. Video number 3, we should be able to get to the end, so make sure you're pausing it and listening to it, and you never know what I'm going to add in just in case I decide to quiz over it. So listen carefully, okay? Now we ended here, Jeffersonian democracy. Thomas Jefferson will become the 3rd president of the United States of America. Now with that, you do definitely need to somewhere write down the political party that Jefferson did start is going to be the Democratic Republicans. The Democratic Republicans, okay? So I know you're not writing anything on this slide, but you got to listen to me very, very, very carefully. Now, many historians look at this time period as the beginning of what we call true democracy. I want you to make sure you circle that. Because Jefferson said, I do not want to be for the elite. I am not a Federalist, he says. Okay? He said, I want to be a champion for the common man. And so he says this is the Jeffersonian era. This is the true democracy era. In fact, he goes down in history. This is a pretty good quote. You might want to write this down. Good quiz question here. He said, we are all Federalists and we are all Republicans, meaning we are Americans. He says, I want to be everyone's president and the champion for the common man. Highlight that in particular. Jefferson does set himself apart because he believes education will prepare people for participation in government. And man, was he right. Imagine uneducated people voting and participating in government. Well, I guess you don't have to imagine too hard nowadays, but we really should value our education and know that the more educated we are about our country and about current events, the better off our democracy would be. But for now, Jefferson says, until we are all become educated, he says, educated people should rule, but he really does hope that all people one day will be educated enough to participate in government. And I think we're reaching that point. A little more common sense would be nice, But, whatever. He also believes that the national system of government had become too powerful during Adams' presidency. Because remember, Adams is a what political party? Federalist, and Jefferson is an anti-federalist. He's also a strict constructionist, saying that Adams gave too much power to the national government via the Constitution. Jefferson says we need to be strict constructionists. We need to be, more towards the common man. The ideal government, he believes, is run by a well-informed, self-respecting farmer paradise. You absolutely need to know that Jefferson has this utopia in his brain. When you watch your crash course, which this is one of the ones I'm going to make you watch, okay? It's a really good one. That his idea, his utopia for America is this agrarian utopia, meaning farmers, okay? Now, there are a couple things that happen during Jefferson's presidency that you absolutely need to know about. Pause this one. Get it down, please. Now, Marbury versus Madison is going anything versus anything. Now, I bet y'all remember this from 8th grade. But anything versus anything else is going to be a Supreme Court case we're studying. We would not have any Supreme Court cases if it were not for the court case in front of you right now. So, pause it, get it down, and make sure you understand this. Prior to this case, the Supreme Court had been the weakest of the 3 branches of government. Now, it was set up by the Constitution of 1787, but really, in all reality, the Supreme Court was just there. It had no power. Heck, we even just talked about a video note or 2 ago about the fact that the Judiciary Act set up the lower courts. It didn't even do that. So, with that, no power, Supreme Court was just kind of sitting there in wigs. Congratulations. But Marbury versus Madison is going to put it on the books. Earlier, the belief was that the states could nullify a federal law. They can't. Remember the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions? That is unconstitutional. States cannot nullify federal law because the federal Constitution is the ultimate supreme law of the land. Well, Marbury versus Madison comes up, and to be honest with you, I might give you extra credit if you can tell me what the actual court case is about. But in all reality, all you need to know is in 1803, the Supreme Court establishes its own authority during this court case. It set a precedent of judicial review. Circle, massive, important. The Supreme Court can declare any law unconstitutional under the power of itself. It also sends the message that the national government is its last authority, thus reinforcing the belief of a strong federalist central government. Now, during this court case, the Chief Justice, I want to make sure you understand this might be a good quiz question here. It's going to be a man named John Marshall. And it will go down in history that this is the Marshall Court. And Marbury versus Madison is the very first case in the Marshall Court. And the Marshall Court, okay, John Marshall. John Jay is the first one. But really the most important one is this guy named John Marshall, okay? He is going to go down as a Federalist who supports national power. Not states' power, national power. I'm going to be honest with you. Marbury versus Madison, it's like the grandpapa of all court cases. You don't know it, you're dead in the water. So make sure you know it. Now, the other thing, and this, I'm going to be honest with you. You probably already know it. Pause it, get it down. Louisiana Purchase. Y'all remember it from 8th grade. Napoleon was at war with Great Britain. He offered all of Louisiana territory to the United States for a mere $15 million. Jefferson says, holy Toledo. It's like me at Kohl's, okay? I'm like, I gotta buy this, okay? Jefferson says, I need to buy this. 3 cents an acre. It'll double the size of the U.S. Circle that. Circle that. And it becomes Jefferson's greatest accomplishment because it doubled the size. Because remember, Jefferson wants an agrarian utopia. Well, to have a farmer's utopia, you need land. So basically, it's just unbelievably good deal. Doubles the size of the United States. He sends out Lewis and Clark, you know that, of course, to kind of map it. The Pacific Territory, the Oregon Territory, Sacagawea, all kind of good stuff. You know the story, okay? But the one interesting thing about this is that it becomes one of Jefferson's regrets, because nowhere in the Constitution does it say anything about the president having the power to purchase land. And remember, Jefferson is a strict constructionist. He believes if the Constitution doesn't say it, it should be left up to the states, or the federal government doesn't have the power to. But there's no way he can pass up this purchase. I mean, look at it. Bam! 1803, Merca, tons of land. And that's all land you can farm. And so Jefferson buys it, but it becomes one of his regrets because he really honestly believes it's unconstitutional. But he does it anyways. And the Federalists will light him on fire for it, even though, you know, it ended up being pretty much the entire reason we could. Oh, by the way, when you look at this, coast to coast, y'all remember what that goal is from 8th grade? Manifest destiny. Can't do it without the Louisiana Purchase. Something to think about. Well, Jefferson leaves office. Next up, James Madison. Pause it, get it down. Now, James Madison used to be, you might want to note this, of course, the father of the Constitution. He also used to be a Federalist as an author of the Federalist Papers. But the funny thing is he is going to be a Democratic Republican president. He will swap in the middle of it. He's a flip-flopper, if you will. He is going to be known basically for the War of 1812. He is going to be the 4th president of the United States. But really up close and personal with him, I would definitely know, most of all, Democratic Republican, War of 1812. In fact, the War of 1812 becomes known as Mr. Madison's War, actually. Kind of interesting to see that. But let me let you pause this and get this down, because this is going to kind of start us off here. All right, Mr. Madison's War. War hawks. If I'm a hawk, I'm aggressive, yes? Okay, so John C. Calhoun, gentleman, okay, member of Congress, Henry Clay, want war with Great Britain because of the, y'all remember we've been talking about the impressment of sailors? Well, the U.S. believes it must defend its neutrality. They think if we let Great Britain just boss us around, they'll keep trying to boss us around, which are probably true. They think we need to stop the impressment. They also want all the British forts off U.S. soil. Jay's Treaty didn't work out that well. They wanted Canada, interesting, and they also thought that, oh, well, you know, we whooped up on the British once, we can do it again, right? Well, you're supposed to be able to. The need to know for the War of 1812, and I know that you guys don't necessarily have this on your page, but you definitely need to make extra room down there at the bottom of that blank, is the Hartford Convention, and then, of course, the treaty that ends the War of 1812, the Treaty of Ghent. So let me let y'all kind of pause this. Y'all can paraphrase it. You don't have to do it word for word. But you need to know this, and when you watch the crash course over the War of 1812, it's going to talk about it. So pause it, get it down. Okay, so the Hartford Convention is basically going to call for state grievances, a 2/3 vote of a declarations of war. They think that should have to happen to go to war. They want to embargo, which means stop trading with the British, and anything like that. Counting as slaves, 3/5, they don't believe that should happen. It actually had a lot of good things in it. But as you watch your crash course, I really want you to make sure you understand something. The Hartford Convention happens right before the Battle of New Orleans, in which America gets this boost of nationalism, and it actually ends up completely annihilating one political party in particular. You're going to find out which one when you watch the crash course. But it doesn't really go over that well in the history books, even though a lot of the stuff they talk about actually probably should have been for. Now, the War of 1812, it really is just kind of a blip in history. We call it the Second War for Independence. I just call it the reason that we have the Star-Spangled Banner. But the Treaty of Ghent ends it. Ended the War of 1812. It ended it in 1814. No territorial changes. It increased the spirit of nationalism in the United States. That's good. But it also increased sectionalism, which means north versus south. Trade interruptions. Significant growth in American manufacturing because we couldn't get finished goods from Britain, so we started manufacturing our own. So actually, increased nationalism and increased manufacturing kind of was good for us, I'll be honest with you. Just some fun things. Y'all don't necessarily have to know this stuff, but I don't know, I might ask a quiz question about it or something. This is the war in which, this is Mr. Madison's war. Dolly Madison, his wife, they had taken and they were about to have a state dinner. Kind of a cool story here. The food was set, everything. They were about to party it up, get a little liquor in them, okay, because they're all over 21. And all of a sudden they hear the British are coming to torch the White House because it's the middle of War 1812. Dolly Madison, had all of this food set up, but she hears they're coming. She takes and she leaves all the food right where it is, and she grabs all the paintings, like the painting of Washington in particular, the portrait of Washington, and they escape the house with, the art, basically, and that's it. Well, the British get there, they see all this food, and they see all this liquor, and they're like, well, heck yeah. They sit down, party it up, then they torch the place, which, by the way, still in 2015, there are soot stains from where the building was burnt in August of 1814. Kind of interesting. Take a look at this Twitter. This is hilarious. This was the British Embassy's commemorating the 200th anniversary of the end of the War of 1812. The sparklers on the cake. Only sparklers this time. Kind of funny. The other thing, this is, of course, where the Star-Spangled Banner is going to be written. Francis Scott Key, Oh Say Can You See, By Dawn's Early Light. They were asking if the flag was still standing at Fort McHenry in Baltimore. War of 1812. Now, last thing, James Monroe. There's really only one thing you need to know about James Monroe. Pause it, get it down. He is a Democratic Republican. You're noticing we're having a lot of these. Pretty popular. Thanks, Jefferson, champion of the common man. He was born in Virginia, elected as a senator, helped negotiate the Louisiana Purchase. He will basically start this era of, and I want you to circle this huge circle, good feelings, because the Federalist Party has died. We've beaten the British again, and we're now manufacturing, and we all feel good about ourselves. Good feelings, although I'm going to tell you, we're kind of starting sectionalism, so it's like good feelings in the North, good feelings in the South, but not together. This nationalism, though, takes over. Pause this, get it down. Powerful feeling of patriotism and national unity developed after the War of 1812. We have a couple different kinds of nationalism. I want to make sure you understand this. Of course, the root word of nationalism is nation, pride in your nation. Economic nationalism, because we are putting protective tariffs. Now remember, a tariff is a tax on imports. So if I put a tax on imports, goods coming in, that makes them more expensive, so Americans are more likely to buy the French good that's $3 or the American good that's $2. Well, we buy what's cheapest. Well, that means I get $2 into the pockets of Americans, which is good for our business. Economic nationalism. The next thing is judicial nationalism. This is going to be one of the ones you have a hard time with. The court case you need to know is McCulloch versus Maryland, in which the court struck down a Maryland law that taxed the national bank. State can't tax the national government. There it is, national government. So that's judicial nationalism, okay?